I'm Starborn. Remember, to be a star, you have to shine your own light, follow your own path, and not be afraid of the darkness, because that's when stars shine brightest. First of all, I want to say Happy New Year, and then I'll tell you the title of the show, because this is a show that's going to cover all of the new moons and the eclipses for 2025. And so the title of the show is 2025, A Year of False Starts. And why is that? It is because the planets are going a little crazy this year, and that is because there are so many of them that are going forward, and then they're going retrograde, and then they're changing signs, and then they're going back into the former signs, and then moving forward again. You have to have a scorecard to keep track of how many different planets are doing that. Another thing that is a little bit unusual about this year is that all of the new moons for the year occur in somewhere in the last 10 days of each month. And that is because just 2 days ago, we had a new moon, which was the last new moon of 2024, and it was on December 30th and at 10 degrees of Capricorn. And so that set us up for the new moons in 2025 also all being late in every single month for the whole year. And that means that if a new moon is happening somewhere near the end of one month, it's going to have an effect on the upcoming month as well. So you sort of need to keep that in mind, that some of these predictions are not just for the month where the new moon occurs, but it could be that that effect continues on into the next month. Another thing that is happening is that there's 10 planets up there. We know that the sun and the moon, you can count on them, they're pretty predictable. But of the other 8 planets, 6 of them are in this pattern of going forward, then going retrograde, leaving one sign, going into another, coming back again. You see all of that change. And the fact that there's so much planetary change this year is an indication that a lot of people can be making false starts. That could happen to everyone, really, in one way or another. But you have to remember that a false start can be something that can really help you make a better new beginning. And there is a solar eclipse in Aries which rules new beginnings. And so if something doesn't work out, or you get into something that you want to do, and you find out, gee, this isn't what I wanted at all, and so that was a false start, but that could help you firm up your good intentions and help you go in a new direction that is better for you. And so, sure, it's going to be a year of false starts because the planets are going a little bit crazy. But on the other hand, whatever false start you come up with, it's going to put you in a better direction, in something that's better for you. So just try to remember that as time goes on. And then there are several major planets that are changing signs this year. And that will have an effect on us that will sort of build up to a crescendo that is going to peak near the end of the year. And I'll explain that as we go along. But for right now, what does it mean in January? Well, on January 29th, remember that's at the end of the month, there is a new moon at 10 degrees of Aquarius, and Aquarius rules the future. Well, in fact, there's 4 planets in Aquarius at that time. That's great. And so what that means is that there can be quite an emphasis on your future plans. And there can even be the possibility of some new partnership or great idea that comes to you that you sort of want to begin to work on after the holidays are over. And so you can begin to work on that in January. So Aquarius rules the future. So the focus is going to be on the future. And that way, if you know that new things and new ideas are around, you won't be afraid to consider them or to follow up on a good idea of your own. And that is what you should try to do at that time. Because actually, January ends better than it starts. So we have that to look forward to. Okay, what does it mean to in the month of February? Well, in February, we have another new moon, and it is on February 28th, and it's at 10 degrees of Pisces. And there are a lot of planets in Pisces at that time. First of all, it's the sun and the new moon. But Saturn is also in Pisces, and Neptune is still in Pisces, but it's very late in the sign. It's the ruler, and it's leaving. And something unusual is also happening now at the start of the year, and it will affect this new moon in Pisces. And it is that once every 18 months or a year and a half, two mathematical considerations involving the moon take place, and they involve change. And it is that the north node of the moon, and this, which is the lucky north node of the moon, and the unlucky south node of the moon change signs. And since they're mathematical calculations set up by the ancient wise men, they move backward in a sign. So under this Pisces new moon in very late February, it simply means that the north node is starting out, the lucky north node is starting out in Pisces at 29 degrees. It's conjuncting the new moon, and the north node indicates a lucky friend that will always help you out. The south node of the moon indicates somebody who really doesn't want to see you succeed, and generally is somewhat of an enemy of yours, or is going to try to stop you in one way or another. Since the moon rules women, it generally indicates a lucky woman friend, or another woman friend that is just not going to ever be your best friend. So this new moon in Pisces at the end of February is conjuncted by the lucky north node of the moon, and because it is the ruler is still there, Neptune and Saturn are still there. It's really a very powerful new moon, particularly for things that are going on behind the scenes, because that's what Pisces rules. And so this is a time, particularly since Neptune rules dreams, that a very fond dream of yours really could be taking shape. And maybe it hasn't come true yet because, you know, the right person or the right lucky person hasn't come into your sphere of influence yet, but they could arrive. That could happen. And remember that that would also cover part of the month of March, because the new moon is so late in February, as all the other new moons are this year. They are all at 20 degrees or later, or not 20 degrees, but 20 days or later in the month. And so they're so late in the month, they're going to influence the next month as well. So keep that in mind. So what does it mean in March? Well, in March, we come into the spring eclipses. And an odd thing is happening this year. You don't always see this, that's why it's a little bit odd, is that both lunar eclipses this year are total eclipses. And so on March 14th, there is a total lunar eclipse, and it is at 24 degrees of Virgo. This is the first of many times when the sign of Virgo is highlighted this year by some planetary aspect. And so the total lunar eclipse at 24 degrees of Virgo is opposite the planets that are in Pisces, because we know that a lunar eclipse is a full moon. And so it would be that the moon is at 24 degrees of Virgo, but it's opposing the sun in Pisces, along with the north node and Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And so this is a time when I think, with these total lunar eclipse indicating that one woman goes and another woman comes, and it is coming up against so many powerful planets in Pisces because it's in Virgo, I think this is a time when something fizzles out. And so if we're looking at what might happen fairly early or by the middle of March, something fizzles out. And so that would be an indication of a false start. In other words, something that you thought was going to work, maybe you're involved with it, or maybe your employer is involved with it, or a friend of yours is involved with it, but it fizzles out. Okay, well, there's more to this story, because 2 weeks later, on March 29th, very late in the month, there is a solar eclipse, and it is at 9 degrees of Aries. And so Aries rules new beginnings. And that means that a new beginning, because it's a solar eclipse, is going to get off the ground because both of the lights, the sun and the moon, are in Aries. And so this is a time when something new begins. And it might be the result of something else that fizzled out, or just didn't measure up, or somebody lost interest, or it wasn't, it might have been an idea that you thought would be very profitable, but it didn't turn out that way. So yes, something may fizzle out under the total lunar eclipse, but under the solar eclipse that occurs 2 weeks later, something new could begin instead. And that's why I'm urging you throughout the year of 2025, when I think you will encounter false starts, and try to look at them as opportunities for improvement or opportunities for advancement. Because after, a false start could come because you start doing something and it turns out that you don't like it. Or it turns out that the terms of it or the length of the project or something is not what you want to be involved in. There's good reasons to learn about false starts, or there's good reasons to change your mind, or there's good reasons to withdraw. It can be that somebody hires you to do a certain job based on your qualifications, and the job doesn't have anything to do with your qualifications. That could equal a false start too, because you wouldn't know how to do the job, and you'd be sort of caught there. So anyway, a new start is certainly going to be underway by the end of March or going into early April, because the solar eclipse is at 9 degrees of Aries, which is great. Okay, what does it mean in April? Well, in April, there is a new moon at April 28th. Let's see. Yeah, there's a new moon at April 28th. And because it's so late in April, the sun is already in Taurus. And this new moon is at 8 degrees of Taurus. But at the same time, remember I said this is a year when the planets are really moving around. And you need a scorecard to keep up with everything. But I made one for the whole year. So as we go through the shows week by week, which I generally do, don't worry, we're going to cover all of this. But for right now, under the new moon on April 27th at 8 degrees of Taurus, there are a lot of retrograde planets at the same time. And because there are so many retrograde planets at the same time as this new moon, I think that actually that something can go forward because it's a new moon, but that there will be no bailout. The problem is that a major planet has changed signs, and it's going to affect all the fixed signs, and Taurus is a fixed sign. In fact, it's doing that right now. And that is because Pluto has gone into Aquarius, remember where the first new moon was, that's coming right up. And with Pluto in Aquarius, a fixed sign, it is squaring anything that's in Taurus, it's opposing anything in Leo, and it's also squaring anything in Scorpio. And so we need to remember that that is the slowest moving planet in the heavens, and it's going to be doing that all year. And in fact, it's going to be doing that for several years. And so people can run into roadblocks. And so I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of cooperation under this new moon in Taurus, because Pluto will be squaring the sun and new moon in Taurus. But at the same time, I think that there could be a financial situation that may be somewhat upsetting, and Taurus rules the New York Stock Exchange. There could be something upsetting happening around then. And there would be no bailouts involved. So if somebody's overextended, or they've got a little extravagant, or they've been enjoying the high cost of living over the holidays and throughout the winter, they may have a lot of bills, and there will be no bailout. So people who are facing debt might run into trouble under that Taurus new moon. And so even though there will be no bailout, no handout for any financial problems then, at the same time, there can be the completion of a lengthy project. Somebody could have been working on something for a long time, and it would have involved financial matters in one way or another, and that issue is completed by this time, of year. And so if you're involved in any kind of lengthy financial negotiation, it should be over by the right around the time of that new moon, the end of April at 8 degrees of Taurus. Okay, what does it mean in May? Well, in May, on May 28th, there is another new moon, and it is at 6 degrees of Gemini. And the thing that is pretty nice about this new moon is that planets have shifted into other signs by now. And let's see, April or May. The new moon is on May 28th is at 6 degrees of Gemini, and Jupiter is just still in the sign, but it's not going to stay there. It's getting ready to change into Cancer. And so this is a time that can indicate that there could be a lot of things going on that involve family members. And the reason why is that the new moon in Gemini at 6 degrees, I believe that Venus is in Gemini at that time, and it would be conjuncting that Jupiter. It would be a very, very nice time, sort of a very loving time. Or something could work out quite well, particularly for younger people. That would be good. Or if you were interested in a short-term, part-time, or temporary project, something that you just wanted to try out, you could be starting it. It wouldn't be a false start, it would be a start. That's when you could sort of jump in and get your feet wet and give it a try. There wouldn't be anything wrong with that. So that new moon in Gemini at the end of May is a good new moon, and it's setting us up for transitory changes that can occur over the summer. And the reason why I'm talking about that is because as we go through transitory changes in the summer, we are going to come up and build up, remember, to a crescendo that will occur later on in the year. And so this summer is a pretty nice time for you to gather around with your family members to try to do simple things. And in fact, this is a time when young people can get together, and they may have some good ideas about what to start up. And maybe it would be temporary, or maybe they want to volunteer for other projects. That would be perfectly possible. That would be a nice thing to do, because in the following month, remember this is a new moon that's occurring on May 28th at 6 degrees of Gemini, but it's going to influence June, the month of June. And in the month of June, we see that Jupiter changes out of Gemini and it goes into Cancer. So, what does it mean in the month of June? Well, in June, on June 25th, there is a new moon, and it is at 4 degrees of Cancer. And so the sun and the moon are in Cancer, which is good because the moon rules Cancer. And so this is a time when, let's see, does Jupiter change size by then? I think so. Oh, and another thing changes that is a very serious thing. I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier. I'm sorry, I get excited about all this, but earlier, there are 2 major planets that change signs, okay? And I need to mention those. And those I should have mentioned somewhat under the times of the new moons in April and May. And it is that both Saturn and Neptune change and they go into Aries. Remember there was that solar eclipse in Aries that I was talking about the end of March, that it would affect the month of April. Well, Saturn and Neptune by April are both, at least Neptune is for sure, out of Pisces, and they go into Aries. And then Saturn is going to follow, and it's going to go into Aries too. And these 2 planets operate differently in Aries. And I need to stop and give you a little word of caution about that. Aries rules the head, okay? And so when Saturn is in Aries, you have to be very, very careful of any headaches you may get or any eye problems you might have. And you have to run, not walk, to the doctor and get those checked out, because Saturn in Aries is a sign of strokes. Strokes occur in the head. Saturn is a planet of obstruction. And that's the way it operates in Aries. And so there's going to be more strokes than we're used to seeing. And that's why I say, if you have eye problems or you get any kind of a bad headache, run, don't walk, to the doctor and tell them what's going on and get it checked out. Because Saturn in Aries, and it usually stays in a sign 2.5 to 3 years, so this is going to go on for a while. Saturn in Aries represents strokes, an increase in strokes which occur in the head. It also could represent any kind of an illness that is related to the brain. And so there will be a great focus on that while Saturn is in Aries. But Neptune in Aries works differently too. Neptune is a planet that it rules nebulous things, things that are a little bit hard to see or hard to understand. It rules deceptions and omissions, for instance. It rules extreme creativity as well. But when Neptune goes into Aries, which rules the head, and it is the ruler of a water sign, there is an indication that there would be increased drownings. And so you have to be real careful. This is not a summer when you should leave a kid who doesn't know how to swim anywhere around water. And don't say, oh yeah, you can go out in the inner tube too. No. Children are going to have to wear life belts, or they're going to have to be watched constantly. And it may not just be children. Neptune in Aries, for the time that it stays there, and Neptune's transit is long, this is going to go on for years, could indicate sudden drownings. It could happen to anybody. And so you need to be very, very careful around water. Sorry I'm getting off on that, but I meant to tell you that just a little bit earlier. So back to this, what does the new moon mean in July, or in June? And we see that on June 25th, I think, there is a new moon, and it is at 4 degrees of Cancer. And this is a fantastic new moon because the moon rules Cancer. So there it is. But also, earlier in June, Jupiter left, this is occurring late in June. Earlier in June, Jupiter left Gemini and came into Cancer. And so Cancer's loaded under this new moon because it's got Jupiter there. Well, there's a greater significance there than you think. And that is because Cancer is the United States sun sign. Okay, so we know that when the sun or the moon is in Cancer, the sign of Cancer is elevated. It's very, very strong. And in fact, one of the degrees in Cancer, which is the 13th degree of Cancer, is called a critical degree. And that is the exact degree that the United States sun is on from 1776. And so we're going to have a great 4th of July celebration. Wherever you are, get out and enjoy the 4th of July, because there's going to be a lot of planets in Cancer. And so what that means is that there are people that may want to make a move. It would be a very good time to make a move in late June or in early July. And it would also be a wonderful time to start a family. So there can be young people that want to start their families, and they may want to buy their first home, or they may just want to move. And so that's nice, because all of that idea of sort of coming together and being a family in one way or another, even if it's a blended family or a new family or an adopted family, will work out just fine. No problem. It would work out great, because Jupiter is going to be in Cancer for a whole year. And so that is going to highlight America. Okay, and remember, we're building toward a crescendo of events by the end of the year. And this is one start of it. America's sun sign is being favorably aspected because of this new moon in Cancer. Okay, what does it mean in July? Well, on July 25th, there is a new moon at 2 degrees of Leo. And this is a new moon in Leo that's running into a little bit of problems. And the reason why, all year long and for years to come, Pluto will be in Aquarius. It's a fixed sign, and so is Leo. And so, and Pluto's coming up against the new moon in Leo, and that can mean that somebody who has future vision, because it's in Aquarius, or wants to go ahead and work with people, generally people who have bright ideas that want to try things out, even if they're just temporary projects. Those people can be so excited about things that are going on this summer that they can back a lot of projects by younger people. So if you're a person who has had a project sort of fizzle out, or a plan fizzle out, no matter what age you are, earlier in the year, you might want to look under that Leo new moon to make some sort of new beginning, because it trines the sign of Aries, where we had the solar eclipse earlier in the year. And so that's good. But would there be enough money for it? No, there wouldn't. You'd have to go on your great ideas and your good communication skills to get something going. There wouldn't be a lot of money for big money for a speculative project. And also under that new moon, which opposes Pluto in Aquarius, you really should not take a gamble on anything at that time. It would not work out. And on top of that, if you get suckered into something, you're the one that'll probably have to pay for that. So don't take chances then. That would not be a good idea. So what does it mean in the month of August? Well, in August, as we're coming to the end of the summer, there is a new moon on August 23rd, and it is at 0 degrees of Virgo. Notice I'm mentioning that Virgo gets hit this year. There is a total lunar eclipse in Virgo in the spring, and now there's a new moon in Virgo under this new moon in the end of August. And the reason why it's at 0 degrees of Virgo is because if you really looked at, okay, what is the exact degree and minutes of the sun on that day, and it's going to be like 29 degrees, 45 minutes. And a minute, 60 minutes make up 1 degree. And so if something is at 29:45, you round that off to the next degree, and that's going to be 0. It's the start of a new sign. And so this is a new moon in Virgo, but it's at 0 degrees. And so this is a time when, once again, if you were interested in making a modest start at something, you could probably do that. But there can also be people around that are not agreeing with you. And so if you want to make a start and you're really excited about something, but you can't get agreement from enough other people, it may end up being a very modest new start, or else it could be a false start of some sort. And you would perhaps need to wait until things gel a little bit more, which they may do. Give it a little more time is what I'm saying. If you run into a false start, don't give up on it. Just give it a little bit more time. Because remember, the thing that's going to be accented so heavily this year is anything that Virgo rules. And so Virgo rules the 6th house of employment, so jobs. There's going to be a big emphasis on jobs. And it rules the whole healthcare field. And because Mercury is its ruler, it rules mental health as much as physical health. And Virgo rules the whole central nervous system. So Virgos worry a lot. And it hits their nerves when they worry. But they do worry about everything because Virgo rules facts and details. And so this is a year when it would help you if you spent a little longer time looking at the facts and details and make sure you've got everything right before you sort of commit any financial resources. Just be careful, not only with your money, but with your health, for sure, because there will be changes. Virgo rules accounting. A lot more people can be accountable for whatever they're doing this year, and they'll have to explain it, so I hope you have good reasons for what you've been doing. And that is because you could be realizing that something that you had been doing with somebody or a project you've been working on, or a move that you want to make, or a goal that you have, you may be realizing that that's not a good fit for you, or you're not, it didn't quite turn out the way you wanted it to, or the public wasn't buying it, or it just ended up boring you. And so there's all kinds of reasons why a false start could occur. And believe me, that's okay for you to face the truth. That's what you ought to do, because once you face the truth, a newer beginning could occur for you, a better one. And you should give that a try. So don't give up on anything unless you already can say to yourself, you know, that's not really what I wanted. Or that person, I don't really think that I'd feel comfortable continuing on with that person or that group. Maybe something has become a waste of time in your life. And Virgo rules time management, and it rules efficiency. And there's only 24 hours in a day, and it's going to become quite clear to people, certainly by the time of this new moon in Virgo, that time is money, and time is valuable. And you could say, oh, if you lose money, gee, that would really hurt your budget. But if you lose time, that can hurt your future plans, because you're not paying attention to the future. So if you've been living in the past, this is not the year to do that. This is a year to realize that maybe you have made some false starts in your life, and it's time to do things that you really feel you could be successful at. And so that would be good. So what does it mean in September? Well, in September, we come into the fall eclipses. And remember, we're sort of building to something by the end of the year or in the fall. And it begins with these fall eclipses, because on September 7th, there is another total lunar eclipse. And it occurs at 15 degrees of Pisces. And Saturn and Neptune have moved back into Pisces. Remember, they went into Aries, but they retrograded back into Pisces, and they're there under that full moon lunar eclipse. So Pisces is a sign that's really loaded under this lunar eclipse. But since the moon rules women, and a lunar eclipse is a full moon, it means one woman goes and another woman comes. And the way that I think that's going to happen, since the full moon is actually in Pisces, and so the full moon is at it's at 15 degrees of Pisces. That means the sun is at 15 degrees of Virgo. They oppose each other, indicating a separation. And since Saturn and Neptune are there as well in Pisces, and Pisces rules things that are hidden behind the scenes, there is the possibility at this time, as we're going into fall, that a woman who didn't work out, or who wasn't right for the job, or who was a phony, or who was what you might call a pretender, trying to look like she knew what she was doing, but she didn't. This woman can be found out, illuminated under that full moon, and she goes, because a lunar eclipse always means one woman goes and another woman comes. Well, who's going to come to replace the woman that was just a pretender, or just really wasn't qualified or wasn't up for the job? And the person that comes is the genuine article. The person that replaces the woman that leaves is the real thing. And she'll be absolutely excellent. She could have been around, and perhaps just in the background, and the spotlight might not have been on her, but as soon as a pretender leaves, then the genuine article steps forward. And she's exactly the right person. And so that's good. And then 2 weeks later, after that lunar eclipse in Pisces, there is a solar eclipse on September 21st. And that solar eclipse is, guess where? It's at 29 degrees of fate in the sign of Virgo. And it is the only new moon that's at the 29th degree in 2025. So this new moon, which is a solar eclipse and always denotes a new beginning, really means business. And it indicates some sort of partnership or the completion of a policy, or maybe the institute, maybe a new policy comes forward and it's been pretty carefully put together. Virgo, remember, rules facts and details. And this policy is meant to be. It's going to work. It's going to go forward. And so this is a time when people really have to be pretty sure of what they're doing. And if you say, gee, no, I think I'm involved in a false start here, I need to start over somewhere else, I hope you know that by September, or you realize that by September, because that's a solar eclipse at the 29th degree of fate. Surely there will be a change in the healthcare field or in banking, and because Virgo rules both of those. But Virgo also rules jobs, and it rules particularly occupations that are of service to others. So it rules teaching, and it rules nursing, and social work, and firemen, and policemen, people who serve the public and the community. And so there is going to be a vast improvement in that in one way or another. So it could also be some sort of improvement in the way people manage their time at work, because Virgo rules time management. So that particular solar eclipse is it is really put together for the good. And it's something that's going to hold up. That's not a false start, but it may be the result of prior false starts during the year, earlier, but somehow people get their act together and, okay, something works. It'll be a change, but it'll work, which is good, because it's a solar eclipse at the 29th degree of fate. Boy, you can't get away from those. But it's also the only new moon that's at the 29th degree of fate all year long. But it seems to be the culmination of the total lunar eclipse in Virgo that occurred in March, and of the new moon at 0 degrees of Virgo that came along, and now a solar eclipse in Virgo. So we're really looking at change. But I think it's a change that evolves, perhaps from false starts that people make, because they're based on past assumptions. This is a year when we can't quite afford to make past assumptions. We have to be looking at things in a little newer way. And and that is one of the big reasons, is because a major planet, Pluto, went into Aquarius, and that is the sign of the future. Now, other planets changed. Remember, Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, which rules the head, but they retrograde back into Pisces. Well, don't worry, they'll go back into Aries. And Jupiter leaves Gemini, and it goes into Cancer. And then the big one, the really big one that's going to affect us for years to come, begins, and it's sort of a little bit of a false start. It begins because Uranus leaves Taurus, and Uranus goes into Gemini. And that Gemini is the rising sign of the United States. Okay, so we see that the new moon in Cancer accentuated the sun sign of the United States. When Jupiter goes into Gemini, it will highlight the ascendant of the United States, which is actually 7 degrees of Gemini. Uranus won't hit that this year, because Uranus is a fairly slow mover. It stays in a sign for 7 years. And Uranus is going to retrograde and go back into Taurus. That's why I think financial conditions will have no bailout. Somebody's going to come up with financial matters that have got to be fixed, not bailed out. And then Uranus will go back into Gemini. The reason why that's so important, even though it's going to retrograde back into Taurus, is because it will be trining Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, and so what we see is the sun is going to go into Cancer, America's sun sign. Jupiter is going to go into Gemini, America's rising sign. And Pluto is going to spend the time for years to come in Aquarius. And Aquarius is where America has its own moon in its natal chart. Well, that's why we love space. That's why we love flying. That's why we love new inventions. That's why we like high tech. Hey, Aquarius rules that. And in America's chart, the moon is in Aquarius. And so this year in 2025, it's a year of false starts because we're making assumptions based on the past. And this isn't a year when we can afford to do that. It's going to take us a while to realize that, gee whiz, America's sun is being accentuated, America's rising sign is going to have Jupiter in it, and America's moon sign already has Pluto in it. You get the feeling that something's going on with America, particularly in the last half of the year. And so that's why we'll all experience some false starts. It might be because we're operating on past preferences without understanding that the times have changed and we have to go forward to our future instead. That sure is the way our country is going, and it begins during the new moon that goes into Cancer, and then Jupiter goes into Cancer, and Uranus goes into Gemini, and Pluto is already in Aquarius. Watch out, world, here comes America. Particularly the last half of the year, it's going to happen. And so, let's get back to the months. What does it mean in October? Well, in October, on October 21st, there is a new moon at 28 degrees of Libra. And Libra rules partnership, and it rules legal contracts, and it rules peacemaking. And so you think all that would work out pretty well. Uh-oh, but wait a minute, something else is going on at the same time. And it is that Mars will have gone into Scorpio. And Scorpio rules war. And Libra rules peace. And so this is a time, since Mars will be in Scorpio at that time, it will be squaring Pluto in Aquarius. Mars and Pluto are the two rulers of Scorpio. Oh, they're going to be squaring each other. That's not too good. There could be tension. And so what does Pluto rule? Well, first of all, Scorpio rules war, but in particular, Pluto rules nuclear warfare. And Mars and Pluto will be squaring each other under this new moon in Libra. And so I think that there can be a tense peace pact that is proposed, or that people are sort of pushing. They want to bring warring sides together and create some sort of a peace treaty or peace pact to avoid a nuclear threat. And that could occur under that new moon in Libra on October 20th. And so remember, it's going to influence the next month, which is November. And so what happens in November? Well, in November, we will have reached this crescendo of things that are happening. And we would have started the year perhaps thinking about the future under the new moon in Aquarius on January 29th. That's great, because there were 4 planets at the time. But we're ending the year really sort of getting down to brass tacks and really being very much in touch with our feelings. Because under the new moon on November 20th at 28 degrees of Scorpio, a rare thing is happening. And it's so rare, you may never see it again. But the way for me to describe it is that the lid blows off the top in November. The lid just blows off the top. And why is that? Because justice is done at last. So I don't know who's going to receive the justice, but they're definitely going to receive it. And the reason why that the lid blows off the top is because there are 7 planets out of the 10 up there. 7 planets are going to be trining each other in all the water signs. It's a grand trine in the water signs of 7 planets under that new moon in Scorpio. And so it sure means that with 7 out of the 10 planets in harmony in the healing water signs, the people are going to be very sure of their feelings. And of course, that's a time when we're approaching the holidays, because it'll be November 20th when that new moon occurs. So it's, right before Thanksgiving. And people are going to be saying, Well, we know how we really feel about something, because there's going to be 4 planets under the new moon in Scorpio, and there's going to be Jupiter in Cancer, and there will still be Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. It's going to happen, folks. The lid blows off the top. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. But it's the buildup of what's been what has been changing all year. And as far as your false starts go, look at that as an opportunity for better success. Think of it that way. And, you know, if you are in a position to be hiring people, and you thought you were going to hire somebody that you liked, that could fit in with your group, but you find out that they don't fit, or they're not qualified for the job, then that's going to be a false start. You've got to say goodbye. But that can make you much more clear about what your real intentions are. And that can make a new person that you bring in much better qualified, and that can enhance your own chances of success. So there's nothing wrong with admitting where you're making a false start. It may not be a mistake. It may be just that you're realizing the truth a little bit better than you used to. And armed with the truth, you can make a better new beginning. And so it's a year of false starts, because the planets are going all over the place. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be a failure. It means that you can grow from it and succeed. And by November, right around Thanksgiving, the lid blows off the top of something, because justice is done at last. Scorpio rules justice. And there's 7 planets in a grand trine. It's going to happen to somebody. So what does it mean in December? Well, in December, on December 20th, there is a new moon at 28 degrees of Sagittarius. And remember that these new moons are all in the last 10 days of a month. They all come late in every month. And so they have an influence over the next month that's coming along. And so this new moon at 10 degrees of, at 28 degrees of Sagittarius is occurring pretty late in the sign on December 20th. And so that simply means that since Sagittarius is an intellectual sign, and it does rule the courts, and it rules international law, and it rules the higher mind, so it rules 4-year colleges and universities, and it it rules foreign countries and people from them, and in a way it rules a tolerance for ideas that involve a lot of people from a lot of different places. And so under this new moon that occurs late on December 20th at 28 degrees of Sagittarius, there is the possibility that beneath the surface that distrust still remains, but that other people are trying to sort of put a good face on things. But there can still be distrust and pressure underneath that. And so we might be spending the year trying to have to get used to new things. And that's why it's better if you realize that a false start, if you're caught in one, well, if you've been working for your employer for a long time and suddenly they go out of business, ooh, that represents a false start to your career, doesn't it? Because you'd have to go out and find a new job. You just might find one that you like better. These false starts are going to head you in a better direction. So it's very important for you to realize what a false start is in your occupation, in your relationships, in where you live. Because a lot of people can be making somewhat modest moves if they want to, or people can be starting new families. You just have to, I would say the one real word of danger that you need to be aware of is that when Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, remember they're going to be there for years. They'll retrograde back into Pisces this year, but they're really headed into Aries. And that could mean that any headaches or any pressure with your eyes, anything wrong with your eyes, you need to go to a doctor real quick and find out what else is going on. And don't wait. because Saturn is a planet that takes 28 to 30 years to get into a sign. It takes 28 to 30 years to get around a chart even once. So it's a real slow mover. And that means that if you've had any health habits that could lend themselves to getting a stroke or having trouble with your eyes, you probably have had that problem for a long time. And if it's just starting to bother you, you've got to get to a doctor as fast as you can, because you could have a bigger problem than you think with Saturn in Aries. And with Neptune in Aries, it means unexpected drownings, because Neptune rules what's underneath. And it's a planet that rules a water sign. And you could say, well, this is perfectly safe here. No, you're going to have to guarantee that if the loved one is anywhere around water, you got to be watching them like a hawk. Because a sudden accident could occur at any time once Neptune goes into Aries. It's not happy in Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. Neptune is this easygoing, nebulous planet. Those two kinds of things, the influence of Mars and the influence of Neptune, they don't get along. And so you got to be real careful. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope I did not confuse you, but don't worry, because we're going to go over this just 1 week at a time. And it'll begin to make more sense as we go on. So I'm sorry that I am speaking about so many different things happening, but we'll see it all unfold, and of course we'll be together. So that's why I want to wish you a Happy New Year, and I want to thank all of you who have become new subscribers, and I hope you tell your friends about the channel and they become new subscribers too, because I think it's real important that we stick together this year and that we sort of try to help each other. And I'm going to do my part and try to explain things to my wonderful viewers. So thanks a lot. Next week's show is going to cover the sun sign predictions for all of 2025. So I will have predictions for each one of your sun signs, so I hope you stay tuned to that as well. All right. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week. Bye.